Corbolic V2. This is a super safe and effective natural anabolic. Not only is this product going to help you increase protein synthesis, which basically means muscle recovery and growth, it also may inhibit myostatin, which is a protein in your body that is known to inhibit muscle growth. This is a complete natural anabolic that works through multiple different pathways, has multiple trademarked ingredients. If you are a natural athlete looking for that edge, Corbolic V2 is what you need. Get yourself some.
Okay, so in super Christina fashion, I just interrupted Priscilla in the middle of a story and was like, stop talking. Let's talk about this on the podcast. So welcome back, guys. It is Christina, Danika, and Coach Priscilla is joining us today. She's been able to pull her head out of the books for a little bit and was like, hello, let's podcast. And I love it because I was able to be like, yeah, you want to do it in like 48 hours? And we were able to do it. Yay. Okay, so before we dive into your plan and what you're doing and stuff like that with your running, because she's taken on a new running adventure. It's been like a year now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So why don't you just kind of introduce yourself and, tell everybody a little bit about what you've been up to, kind of who you are as a coach, just since it's been a bit since you've been on the podcast. And then that way everyone kind of feels you out and then we'll jump in and go from there.
For sure. So, hey guys, I'm Priscilla. If you haven't seen me before, hey. Been on the podcast a few times, but just kind of like here and there. So yeah, I've been with Physique for, it'll be 4 years in September that I've been with y'all, so that's really cool. A little bit of a background. I have my bachelor's and master's in exercise science from USF. It's one of my degrees is there. The other one's over here somewhere. So I got that back in 2015 and 2020. Work with mainly lifestyle clients, and for the past year, I've been embarking on a new journey with running. I still enjoy lifting, but just wanted something else, just something different to kind of throw into the mix. And growing up, I played a lot of sports. Soccer, volleyball, basketball, whatever, you name it, I probably did it. Except for track and cross country, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I just started up on this running journey this past year. I moved from Tampa to Gainesville, and there's a lot of local areas that will do like runs for charities, or like local breweries will do a lot of runs too, which I'm a big brewery person also. So it's been really cool to go in and do these local runs, and they also donate to charity. They help with like the conservation funds and everything like that. So it's been a lot of fun doing that here, and still, balancing lifting. And then also it was the spring. My husband's a big soccer fan. So he started playing rec league ball last fall. Went to a couple of games in the spring to watch. And they were like, hey, we need another girl. Do you want to go with us for the tournament? I was like, sure, why not? I haven't touched a soccer ball in 10 years, but why not? So tried that out, and that's also something I have embarked on in the last few months. I've been playing since, I think, April. So lifting, running, and soccer now, which has been really cool. And then on the non-fitness activity side of things, I decided to go back to school to get my registered dietitian's license. So that has been going on since January. Still have a couple of years, but that is also something on my plate. So it has been quite the 2025 for sure.
Yeah, just a little bit busy. I want to dive into so much with that, but I love that you went from a place of adding and running just to be like, I haven't conquered that yet, and so I'm going to go do that for a while, and then that it led you into being like ready to go with soccer, because I'm sure the two kind of work together. So I love being able to just say yes. Like that's been my big focus like lately, is just trying to get like myself and clients in a place where like if something crazy like that happens, it's like, yeah, I could go do that. And Danika, I don't know if you ever think about this stuff, but like, I forget what it was recently, something playing with the kids. And I was doing something with them, and it made me think about like when I was a kid, and I would hear from so many family members who, looking back now, I'm like, you were not that old. Like they were in like their 30s and 40s, where it was like, oh, I can't do that. Like my knees hurt, or like they couldn't play, or they couldn't do these kinds of things. And if there's anything that I'm able to do, like that's going to be so important to me, to be able to like sprint around and like pick people up and throw them in the air and all of that kind of stuff for as long as possible, and just be able to be like, yes, I do want to do that. Because you remember that, here I am at 38, and I'm like, gosh, I remember Why did everyone used to have such bad knees all the time?
Oh no. I absolutely, I totally can understand that. And we had a trip to New Jersey and we were on the beach and we had all of their cousins there. So ranging from like 2 years old to 8 years old. And there were 7 kiddos there. So busybodies, right? Like they want to play, they want to like jump in the waves, and also you have to be like responsible for the kiddos in the waves. And I said to my husband, like, I'm so happy that we're not the parents that are telling their kids like, oh, mommy can't go into the ocean, or mommy can't build a sandcastle with you, or like we just were so active, because I do remember that, and I never want that to be the case. Like, I actually had a conversation about, having age be an excuse. Like, I never want that to be in my vocabulary, I guess, or in my dialogue at all, of like, oh, I'm too old for that. I never want that to be the case, because someone was saying, but age happens. And I'm like, well, of course it does, but like, you determine how it happens. So
Right.
I don't want it to happen where I'm like, I'm 40. At 40, I still want to be able to like play lacrosse with my kids. And shame on the people. I don't know what it was about the knees. What were they doing? Why were they on their knees all this time?
Why do their knees hurt all the time? Have you seen the thing where it's like, one time you pick up your child and it's the last time, and like you don't know it?
Oh,
And
oh my
so
gosh. Yeah.
I will have moments all the time now with Riker, who's 12, right? And I just measured him again today because I keep looking at him and I'm like, I think you're as tall as me now. And sure enough, I went and like drew, we have like one wall where we have all of their heights, right? He's grown more than an inch in a month. Since July 2nd, he's grown like an inch and a quarter. Like, he exploded
Yeah.
this summer. And so if it dawns on me and he's in the same room, I'll go over and be like, not today. And like scoop him up. And I mean, he's huge and he's like a giant spider when I'm holding him. But I'm like, today's not the day.
Yeah.
And I pick him up one more time. And, just trying to kind of keep that stuff awake, because I don't know if you guys have it happen a lot in like consults, but people will bring up that past athleticism or those past behaviors and stuff. And I mean, sometimes it's super relevant, right? If it's like, oh, I grew up playing soccer forever. I took a couple years off, but now I'm back to training for this and that. Okay, so now it's like relevant. But if it's something where like, I played soccer for 15 years and I started when I was 5 and I'm 38 and I haven't played since then it's like, cool. Like, not, that doesn't really influence what we've got going on too much with things. So Priscilla, when you have all of this stuff like going on with like assignments, and I mean, it's going back into like super serious things, where I'm sure it's got to be like sucking the life out of your brain, and then we were talking about it where you're going back to classes that you did like 10 years ago. So I know even when I just got back into mine, I jumped back into like some grad school history classes, and even that with like writing citations, I was like, why is this so annoying?
gosh.
And makes my head hurt so much. But you do have to like turn that back on, right? And it is easier if it's there. So like, how do you work with clients if they come to you kind of in similar situations where they want to dive into something big that will maybe pull focus a little bit, but they want to like kind of keep working on the other things too?
Yeah. So that's where a lot of like time blocking comes into play, priorities, maybe we get up earlier, in the day to start the day. That's something that I've had to do. When classes start, I had one this summer that was in person, 2 that were online, but the majority of them last semester were in person, right? So I'm driving to campus, I'm sitting in class. Now with the science classes, they're labs, right? So labs are like 2.5 hours or so. So it's a big chunk of my day that's taken out. So what I've been doing personally before I tie it into the clients is I will get up at like 6 o'clock in the morning, do some work, before that, answer any emails, try to get caught up on, different lectures or assignments and stuff like that I have to do to really just set myself up for success for that day. And I do something similar the day before where, the night before I'll sit there and be like, okay, what is my to-do list for tomorrow, right? What are my negotiables? What are my non-negotiables? So I utilize that a lot with clients is, hey, we have, we have XYZ, we have these different things going on, whether it's, kids, and then our, our own path, right, with nutrition, with fitness, and then, like you said, maybe going back to school for a couple of classes. What are some things that we absolutely need to get done, and making sure that you're prioritizing yourself too, right? Because as females and just adults with kids, right, we tend to let ourselves kind of fall through the cracks sometimes, right? And I will talk about this a lot with my clients and be like, hey, we, in order for us to be our best selves for other people, we have to be our best selves for us first. If we don't take care of ourselves, how are we going to be there for the people that we need to, right? So it's finding that balance of being, selfish, but also selfless at the same time, because that can be very, it's very black and white for a lot of people. It's like, oh, I have to give it my all to myself, or nothing at all, or, vice versa, right? To the kids, to other responsibilities. So trying to find a bit of that balance there, finding that gray area between the two things that's able to work for them. So, listing out their priorities. I had a client, I think it was a few weeks ago, where there was just a lot going on. Like, I don't know what to do. What am I, their commute to work got longer, these different things just weren't clicking for them. Like, okay, let's take a seat back, instead of using the magnifying glass, let's kind of zoom out a little bit more and be like, okay, what does everything look like? What is something that we are struggling with right now that could have a bigger effect on everything else? So like sleep, right? So one of my clients, just their sleep was trash, right? It just wasn't going well, etc. And it was obviously affecting the rest of their day. They didn't have the energy to do things, just things started falling through the cracks. I'm like, okay, let's focus on that sleep first, because if we don't have the energy, if we're not resting well, if we're not recovering well, it's going to be a lot harder to get everything else done throughout that day. So, focusing on our different priorities. What are things that is going to have that kind of trickle effect? Because that tends to happen a lot with, stress, sleep, etc. So what is that aspect that's going to have that positive trickle effect towards everything else, and we can get everything else done? And like I said, time blocking things, right? If we have appointments for this time, being very, it can seem tedious, but it's very helpful at the end, right? So I'm a huge to-do list person. I've got one for every day of the week for my week, very organized person. So even having I have multiple planners, right? For school, I have one for work, I have one for, other activities. So having everything written down, I find helps out a lot, because we tend to be really in our heads a lot, especially if there's a lot going on. Earlier this week, it's Thursday, right? Yeah, so on Tuesday, I had a lot going on, but I didn't write it down, so I was feeling super overwhelmed, super anxious, and then I was like, wait, where's your to-do list? Where's this fucker? We just need to get this guy, write it down, and just, knock things off. And crossing things off is very satisfying, when you get that list and you cross it off, and it helps me to stay on track. So listing, prioritizing, negotiables, non-negotiables are all tools that I'll utilize with my clients that have a lot going on, and we need to balance everything, and knowing that sometimes we may have to pull from one thing that we may be giving a lot more focus to pull it towards something else, so that we can find that balance, find that gray area between the two things that we want to. And it doesn't mean that we are quote unquote failing at this other thing because we have to pull back. It's giving us more in that slingshot effect, right? When we pull back, we can lean forward a lot more. So utilizing that analogy there to help to realize hey, just because we're pulling from here doesn't mean we're failing. It means that we are just shifting our priorities, and that's okay, right? Life isn't structured, it's not rigid, it's not, inflexible. Life is super flexible. We can change, that we have free will, right? We can make choices, we have the power to do so. And knowing that, giving them that and be oh, I'm empowered to do things, right? Life doesn't choose things for me. Sometimes it'll throw some stuff out of the blue, and we, manage it the best way we can. But knowing that we have the power to make choices that can influence things, and what we can't control, we learn to kind of let go and let it, just kind of take its course, and then we deal with it afterwards.
Did you do before? Well, first, I love all of those things. Before you started adding more to your schedule and more endeavors that you're going after, were you able to kind of take a look at what you have going on now and say, okay, if I add this in, what does that look like? Do I have space to add this in? Because sometimes I find that I am having a conversation with people where they're complaining about the addition of something, but that was their choice to add it in without pre-contemplation and without thinking about adding it in. So then I'm you can't bitch about the hard that you chose. You chose that hard. Maybe we needed to wait, pause, look at what it was, what does it entail, and can I successfully add this in? Where is it going to fit, and what does that look like? Like, what is my bandwidth now, and can I maybe extend it a little bit, or do I not have enough room? Were you able to do that when you added in the things that you're going after now?
Yeah, so that was the beauty with like the classes and stuff, right? You can sign up for whatever course, whatever like time slots are available. You know, there's morning, there's afternoon, there's evening, and you know, letting my clients know ahead of time, be like, hey, you know, going back to school, this is what's going on. You know, I'll let you know if it, you know, if it affects your check-in, or, you know, maybe I'll just reply a little bit later in the day, etc. So having, you know, this type of job is like, you know, it's a blessing in that respect, because I can, you know, change things up, and my clients are rock stars, and they, you know, they're great with all of that. And also looking at the other responsibilities too, right? Like you said, you know, I was able to take a look at everything and be like, okay, this is what my week looks like. Where can I insert these things, right? And how can I also take care of myself and, you know, my family and stuff. You know, right now it's just me, my husband, and the dog. So, you know, right now kids aren't in the picture. So it makes it, you know, less responsibilities in that respect. So again, another blessing, I'm able to do this right now. But yeah, so taking a look at everything and be like, okay, can I fit this into here? You know, having a whole conversation before I even started school, right? So that was a lot of, you know, like the fall last year, the winter mainly, and being like, hey, you know, sitting down with my husband, looking at our calendars, you know, because he travels for work also, and be like, okay, how are we going to make this work, right? When you're out of town and I have classes for a long period of time, what are we going to do with the dog? My parents live close by, so they watch him while I'm in class for, you know, the whole day or something like that. So it was a lot of, you know, that pre-contemplation aspect of things, right? Within that theoretical model and that psychological model of the pre-contemplation phase, and being like, hey, can we do this from multiple aspects? But, you know, in this respect, the time aspect, can I fit everything in there? And looking at, you know, like the course load with everything, the curriculum from the prerequisites that I'm taking now into the actual program. You know, the actual program's a lot more intensive, going to be a lot more classes, but with the way that we have things kind of set up here at home, it makes it that I'm able to do so. And the support system that we have here is super great. Also, with my parents living in town, that was one of our reasons for moving here, for like future and stuff like that. So yeah, we're able to sit down and be like, okay, can we do this? Can I fit it within my time period? Can I still give 110% to my clients, and, you know, not let that, you know, suffer or fall through the cracks and stuff. And yeah, so it was a lot of looking at stuff beforehand, and with the runs too, you know, and the soccer and stuff. So soccer it's a rec league, so it's not super competitive, which is nice. So they have like these rec league practices that are Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We usually go either Wednesday or Friday, and it's in the evening, so it's after, you know, done working and all of that. So it's a nice reprieve from sitting in my office, you know, all day. And then with the running, right now I'm at, I think, a max of like 4.75 miles. So it's not a whole big chunk of time. I finish it within an hour. So I utilize that a lot as my me time, of being like, hey, you know, I'm going to take this time and be like, okay, this is for myself. You know, I've got a lot going on during the day. Let's get some fresh air. Let's go outside. Let's, you know, plug in either a playlist or an audiobook and just kind of zone for an hour. So that's really been a nice reprieve with everything going on.
Yeah.
I've been doing the audiobooks lately. Oh, sorry. If you're not doing that yet for running, I thought it would suck. But because it's not a fast enough tempo, I love it. Because it takes that moving meditation to like another level where you just completely zone out. And then all of a sudden I'll look down and like an hour is gone, and I'm like, what? But you know, because you're like racing. I've been doing, have you read the Jennifer Armentrout? I think I'm in Flesh and Fire is what I restarted.
Okay, I haven't read those yet.
Oh, they're so good. And like plenty of fight scenes, you know? So
Yeah.
Going at it. Okay, Danika, you go now that I've said nonsense.
No, I love that. When I run, I listen to a podcast or an Audible if I have like a book open, or when I'm walking too. And it's funny that you say that, because I feel like when I didn't have access to, back in the old days when there wasn't a lot of podcasts and or you had to read a book in your hands, with music, it's interesting because I would get frustrated. Like, I'd be like, well, this is a stupid one. Well, I don't like this one. Like, I was constantly like worried about like, oh, this is the zone. And then it would like skip to like, I don't know, like Mace or like P. Diddy. And I'd be like, I don't know about this one. Like with playlists, that's hard. With an Audible or with like a podcast, it's super consistent. Like the tempo of it or like the energy level of it is pretty consistent. So then it matches almost your gait. Does that make sense? Like yeah. That's a tangent. But what I was going to say is, did you, when you added on activity, because I'd be curious, like, how to apply this with clients too, were you looking at like, okay, what is my current energy expenditure? What do I currently do as far as my lifts? How is my body going to do with recovery states? Like, did you have to change anything, or did you think, oh, this will just be like an enhancement to everything else that I'm already doing?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, as of what I was doing prior to like adding running in more consistently and everything, it was about 2 to 3 days a week in the gym with my friend. We would go in the mornings, and with the switch to running and soccer, also I've gone down to, especially recently with my running volume picking up a lot more, I've had to adjust a couple things to where my lifts are now about 1 to 2 days a week, focusing more on specific running aspects of things, so more kind of full body workouts. So like more unilateral stuff, more explosiveness, more body weight stuff for like upper body, like push-ups, pull-ups, different things like that are going to transfer more into the running aspect of things. And then also with soccer too, right? Those things will translate over into playing soccer as well. But I think the biggest shift has come from the nutrition aspect of things, because I am expending more energy than I was lifting 2 to 3 days a week with, the runs. I'm utilizing a lot more energy, especially in the heat right now, right? There's a lot more sweat happening, so hydration has definitely gone up, more electrolytes, more liquid calories, like Gatorades and stuff has really helped out for me as well. Nerds clusters, shout out. Those have been fantastic for my runs, for like a little post-workout or pre-workout, intra-workout snacks. So definitely, I'd say the biggest shift has been in nutrition aspect of things. I've had to ramp up my intake, making sure my protein's there throughout the day also. So kind of taking a lifting day away to make space for the amount of running that I'm doing, but still incorporating into it, because it is so important, you keep your glutes strong, keep your core strong for proper running gait and, sprints and stuff like that, doing like uphill runs too. So that has been kind of the shift. And then with soccer, like I said, it's like 1 to 2 a week. Our season just ended for the summer, so we get a break until October when the fall season starts. So this is transitioning more into like running and lifting for me right now. In this season, until the season starts in October, then I'll bring in a little bit more soccer, maybe 2 a week instead of 1 a week. But yeah, it's been more of that shift in that nutrition, and just shifting my goals with lifting to being more from, like, it's still strength, and it was a little bit more aesthetic prior, but now it's strength and power related to sports. So it's just kind of a shift over into all of that. So more like quote unquote functional training is what people would call it, right? Doing more, body weight, plyometric, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the shift that I've taken in my training.
How does that feel doing that? I mean, Christina and I both were involved with like aesthetic sports. How does that feel doing that shift from like somewhat aesthetic based to like kind of not at all? It sounds like not really at all. Like that's like kind of low on it.
Right.
On your priority list. How did that feel from like a mindset perspective?
Yeah, so it was a little difficult to, kind of shift at the beginning of it, because, for the past few years, that's what I've been doing, right? So when I was doing my master's, I was doing more for powerlifting aspect of things. And then when I got out of that, started with Pro Physique, it was more into that aesthetic side of things. So I've been going from more, that plus, training for life, etc., right? That just kind of comes with the territory. But shifting from the athletic to the strength aspect, it was a little difficult, but not as much as I guess some people would imagine, just because of my sports background, my athletic background, right? So I love that kind of stuff. I love the competitiveness and, the drive and the thrive with it. And it's something that helps me to correlate it to something else, of being like, hey, I'm training for X, I'm training for Y, right? I'm training for soccer, I'm training for running, right? It just helps me feel more like explosive, which I really like. It's a very nice like athletic feeling for me. Like I just feel more limber, just feeling like I'm able to do more throughout the day, which is really nice, and translating it into just, everyday activities. So it was a little bit difficult at the beginning, but I feel like I made the shift at a good pace, like fairly quickly, because of my athletic background in the past.
Have you noticed a change in your aesthetics?
Not a whole lot, really. I mean, everything's pretty much stayed around the same. Yeah. I've pretty much been able to maintain it, so that's been really nice. Just lifting, you know, a couple days a week, just kind of focusing on, you know, what I have to, and I feel like I'm able to, I don't know, I feel like I'm able to connect with the exercises a little more recently, just because it's different than what I've been doing. So like lateral step-ups, lateral lunges, you know, like box jumps. I started to do more like explosive Bulgarians, so that has been actually pretty cool. It's a love-hate relationship with those, but I think it's really cool to like have that, like realizing the different type of potential, right? Mm-hmm. You know, we always talk about finding our true potential with our clients, you know, helping them achieve that. And this was more like finding a different potential for myself of being like, hey, you know, you still have that, right? You can still tap into that athletic drive and, you know, the explosiveness and stuff. So that's been really cool to realize that.
Christina, did you notice a big difference, like going from bodybuilding and more aesthetically based and then now more endurance training? Have you noticed a difference in your physique?
Not really. And I was going to say because, and I mean, part of that might be that, you know, so my training program right now, my lifting program, I do 1 to 2 days a week. Mm-hmm. And I was doing full body, and then now I've swapped over to upper lower. So I feel more guilty if I skip something, if I skip one of them. So I was like, make it upper lower. So I feel like I have to do at least one upper. I have to do at least one lower workout. But, you know, like yesterday was my lower, and it was focused on a lot of the same stuff you just said, like the step ups. What I appreciate with Carly is she does still have me doing stuff really heavy. So like squats at like sets of 4 and things like that to still keep that stimulus there with things. Because it is really easy with running to think like, oh, we shouldn't do that. But I think because I've always kept that in to varying degrees, that has helped a lot. But like I also at the end of my leg day still had energy, so like I threw on some lateral raises and like shit like that, where I'm like, you know, the stuff I like that just looks good. So I'll pop that in there too. But what I was thinking about while Priscilla was talking about that was like, for a vast majority of people who are training, who are not doing it for stage or who haven't done it for stage before, I think as long as you're on a program that is challenging you and pushing you forward and it's working everything top to bottom, you're likely to see those changes happen positively. You know, like as long as we're doing some sort of weight training, even if it's just push-ups and pull-ups and stuff like that, like at some point we're going to see that develop if you continue pushing yourself. You know, is it going to be easier to hit a wall of like at some point we're not going to do 1,000 push-ups, you know? So then maybe we add like a plate on your back, or we elevate your feet or something there. But for a vast majority of people, that is more than enough to be able to see really cool progress, and you don't have to stress it. I loved that you brought up just feeling more athletic with a lot of that, and I think that is like the biggest shift between training purely for aesthetics and then training for sport. I was way more uncomfortable in my body for a million different reasons training as a bikini competitor. From the mental aspect of like constantly looking at the shape of everything and like thinking of it one way or another, or the fact that like some of the training, even like, you know, you're doing time under tension, you're doing like all these different things, I felt way more creaky, you know? And like you go into a lot of, if you asked a lot of people who train that way, you're like, okay, now I want you to go run a mile and then see how long it takes you to do 100 push-ups. They might be able to, you know, chest press and like do flies all day long or something, but they're not doing these movements just to move their body, right? Because it's like a different kind of training. I do think that just inherently feels better. And I think that's why when I made the switch, it was so much harder for me to be like, I want to go back to that, because I just personally don't find it as fun. I think it's, you know, like the explosiveness, learning that kind of stuff. My coach had me, so my ankles are the worst. So for like trail running, they're very flexible. And so I'll roll them super easy. And so we started working on more ankle strength. And I felt so dumb. I have to do these like pogo hops. Okay, so I'm like, if people are watching on the YouTube. but you have to go on like one foot, right? And then extend the other leg all the way behind you, and then come up and hop and like keep going and try not to fall over. And so when I first started doing those, I was like the worst. I could not, like, my ankles would just wobble like the whole time. And it was so frustrating. And then you get to the point where like they're not that hard anymore. And then you're out on a trail run and you hit something where normally it would have rolled your ankle. And I like laughed at myself on my last one, like out loud, because I was like, oh shit, that could have been so bad. Yay for pogo hops. And like now she's got me doing the craziest thing where I have to stand on a box. I drop laterally off the box onto one foot and then ski jump over to the other foot. So it's like bounding down to the side on one ankle and
then to the
really
other side.
jumping to the other ankle. Yeah, to get them more ready. Because the thing that always slows me down is I can't like bomb downhills on mountain trails because I get scared because I'm like, ooh, rocks. And so she's like adding all of this crazy stuff in, and then it's, you know, going to the park and playing with the kids and feeling like a mountain goat and like being able to do that stuff and have it translate over. And so you know, for me, I think that it's just been not only physically but mentally so much more challenging in a fun way for me to transition to that. But I think you can keep, if you, especially if you know or you have a coach and like you want the stuff to look good, like it's not that hard to add in, you know, the stuff that's going to create a little bit more roundness on the shoulders, a little bit on the booty. So I always tell clients that I'll be like, we do this stuff, like we're doing this because it makes us perform better. We're doing this stuff because it makes us look cool. So you got to have a little mixture of both of them.
Yeah, and you don't have to, you know, train like a bodybuilder in order to see muscle growth, right? I think that's a very common misconception is, you know, you don't have to train like a bodybuilder to see muscle growth. Like just because you're not doing, you know, lat pull downs all the time or lateral raises or, you know, hip thrusts all the time doesn't mean you're not going to see those changes, right? You can do, you know, like landmine overhead presses or pull-ups or, you know, those pogo hops or, you know, just more explosive movements, and you're still stimulating the muscle. Like, it's not like you're not doing anything. You're going to see those changes. Will it be as drastic? Probably not. But if we're not training for that, then, you know, that's not, you know, an expectation that we're going to set. We're going to be like, okay, yeah, we're setting our expectations to succeed in XYZ, to bring down your mile time, to, you know, do all these different things. And if we see, you know, aesthetic changes as a result, great.
Yeah. There was just, I listened to Rhonda Patrick's podcast, and she had Lane Norton on and Andy Gaplin, and both of them were talking about the specificity of training and how they're like, it doesn't matter. Like, Lane was like, if you want to be a bodybuilder and like you want to train, I can have many clients do amazing and build their glutes without one squat in their program. And it's okay to not get so detail oriented. As long as you have a program that has time under tension and you're activating those muscle groups, you will, and you're fueling yourself adequately, you're going to see adaptations happen. And it was awesome to hear both of them because they train elite top athletes for performance, for aesthetics, for strength, right? And they were like, stop getting into all of the, but if I don't do this, then I won't get this. Like, I have to do this specific thing. And it made me think like, oh, okay. Like, these are the top of the top that like do so much research on everything, right? Like, they're cutting open muscle fibers. So like, they must know their shit. Those were both really good podcasts to listen to.
Yeah. There's another one he did where I forget who Lane was with. Maybe Jeff Nippard, but now I can't remember. And it was about pain. And I thought that one was so interesting because he was talking about like the persistent low back pain from his years of powerlifting and like the mindset. Danika, you'd love it. He was like talking about like if they were thinking about it too much or if they thought about like the workout was going to cause the pain and like how things were related. I thought that was so interesting. And then when you were talking about that, Danika, it made me think about something that Priscilla had said a bit ago. Talking about like planning it and when you were making time for all of this and deciding what was appropriate, and then also putting in the legwork of like, what am I committing to, right? And I think a lot of those things can go into affecting the experience so much more than people want to admit, where it's the anxiety and the not knowing part or the winging it that is in the background, freaking them out the entire time. And so then you never really get to settle into the idea of what you're doing or truly feel like, I'm ready, I'm doing this, I've dived in all the way. Because the whole time you're second guessing, like, fuck, I have no idea. I don't even know where that class is. I don't know where to buy the book, and like you're worried about all of that. How are you going to sit down and open up your brain and take in organic chemistry? That's going to be a lot harder. Whereas, so it makes me think of people who jump into like a diet program, or they're following somebody's like YouTube videos or something, and they're like, why am I not finding progress? And there isn't like a laid out thing. Or if someone says like, oh, well, I heard on Instagram that you should lift 5 days a week if you want to see your glutes grow, I need to be doing this much. It's like, yeah, but you work 2 jobs and have 3 kids and your family has 1 car. How the fuck do you plan on programming that? And so it's like there might be these best laid plans and things that might have worked for you when you were in school 10, 15 years ago, when it was just Priscilla to worry about and you didn't have your home life and everything. And so I think that doesn't get enough attention. And there's a lot of people who, and I say this as like a professional, I'll wing it kind of person, but I'm also one of the most anxious people you're going to meet. And like, don't be like me. So like, don't do it. Have a plan, even if it's rough, of like what you're looking for, and then have flexibility, like you brought up there too, and being able to negotiate with things. And when you're making those lists of like your priorities and stuff, it's really easy to, if we were going to sit here and make a list and it's like, okay, well, I've got my training, I need to do cardio and I need to lift today. I'm also supposed to order groceries. The kids need to be entertained, get all of their food, get outside at some point. Oh yeah, I also have work to do. There's laundry. I have to pick up my husband from the airport. Like all of that actually has to get done, at some point, right? Or at least to some degree. But still, there are orders in there of stuff where like it's absolutely most important, right? The way that I put it today was like, get the kids super happy. I started working, like you said, super early in the morning because I knew we had the podcast, then straight to the airport, that kind of stuff. And so you fit in the pieces when you can. And I think that people miss how beautiful doing it messy can really be. And then getting the confidence and racking up the wins from that, where it's like, did everything, okay, so I'm not going to get my run in today. I was supposed to get 6 miles easy. I didn't have time for that. I had a 25-minute block before our call scheduled, and so I went for a walk. It's not the same intensity. It's not the same amount of time, but I got something done. I could still be sitting here at 1,500 steps for the day, but I went out and got a little over a mile walked, and still got some sunshine, and I don't feel as crazy. And I think that's the part of it where like you have to let that pressure off. Like as a chronic overscheduler, I'll figure it out, I can do everything. Right. It's great to be those people, right? But we still, and like I would be a huge hypocrite if I told people they shouldn't do that. Because as soon as you talk about school, I'm like, well, I've been out of school for 3 weeks now, so maybe I should sign up for another. And like while I was in it, I was like, this is too much, I should wait. And so, but like we have to have that something where it relieves the pressure. And even the workouts, that would be my only trick or like thing to say too. Those can become not fun, and you can start be resentful like towards them too if you're not careful with it. And so having that, I found that I have to have something outside of that too, because I treat my training like if I have a race coming up, that's like a job. Like I'm paying a coach. That is a commitment that I have where like I'm not just fucking around. So then sometimes it feels more like work. And like that's where the weird like fiction reading comes in, where I can super turn my head off and go hide and dive into something else and not worry about anything. And so I think having those two when you're taking all of this on try to plan for that, because you can white knuckle it. You can grit your teeth and get through a lot of shit, but like also why do that to your life? Because
You're
that's
gonna burn out.
going to
Yeah.
pass.
I think it's
Yeah.
actually a bad thing. I think it actually, the goals that you actually do, you tend to not be as proud of them, I think, because you're miserable while you're going after them. So
Right.
that's not a win. It's not a win. I find that rigidity can sometimes like be more of a negative than a positive. And if I just took that dial and turned it down a little bit, I wouldn't feel so disappointed, ashamed. I wouldn't feel guilty. Like all of those feelings of like not good enough, you can't do it, like they wouldn't exist. And also, life will continue to be lifing. So like if you can't practice the skill of being rigid when it's applicable, right, for certain things, right, like, because yes, there's an advantage to that, but even for myself, if I think of like working in a gym to going to Alabama, not having a gym, not having childcare, and just having 2 resistance bands, if I was super rigid and be like, see, my muscles all gonna go to shit, like I would have been a slob kebab. But I was like, okay, adapt. Like adaptation is important, growth, and like trust that like you can still get stuff done and it doesn't have to be perfect. And there's a time and a place, right? We should be able to like bend and weave. And what a great skill to take with you in all aspects of life, right? Like relationships aren't going to be perfect, work isn't going to be perfect, like your kid's schedule isn't going to be perfect, your dog might be sick, soccer might be canceled, your course might be like, I don't know, anything could happen, right? Mm-hmm. So to be able to know that like that rigidity isn't necessarily, it is important, but I don't find it always to be a strength. I find sometimes it can be a weakness when we use it too much, where the dial is so turned up that we like don't enjoy anything anymore.
Right. And it can also tie into, rigidity can be suffocating.
Yeah.
It can be very anxiety inducing, where if we don't hit this thing, we're like, oh shit, I failed for the day. Right? I got every single thing done except for this little minuscule thing. I fucked up. That's my day. And also, if you stick to this rigidity and there's no time for yourself, there's no social aspect of things, your mental health is going to go to shit. Like, I'm sorry to say it, but you're going to burn out a lot faster. Like you said, you can do a rigidity for, I don't know, like a couple weeks, maybe a month or so. But after that, you're like, what? Like, what is this for? Is it worth it for what I'm going for? And I'll talk about this a lot with clients in consult calls where, we can help you reach, a weight loss goal quickly, but how are you going to feel? How is it going to affect you, right? So setting expectations off the gate and being like, I can help you lose 20 pounds in, a couple months, but you're going to feel like shit, and I'm going to feel like shit for doing that to you, right? That's just not how we roll. We're going to try to do things in that steady way where we can find that balance, where we can set these, expectations for yourself and make it into your lifestyle. Like Christina, you said, I want to do 5 days a week of this training, but I've got, 2 kids or 2 jobs, 3 kids, 1 car, right? That's not realistic for that individual, right? So it's also making these adaptations that are going to fit your life. It's going to fit your lifestyle. What are you able to do? And then Danika, like you said, you have 2 resistance bands. We can do a lot with 2 resistance bands.
Yeah.
You can do a lot of stuff with it. It's not like you're going to shrivel up in a week after not doing some resistance training, or even a month, right? So I was telling, this is something I utilize a lot. Do the best with what you have. Mm-hmm. And even if what you have isn't a lot, maybe we don't have any weights, maybe we don't have any bands, push-ups, squats, walking lunges, a jog, some interval training. Those are all things that are still going to stimulate your muscles. And is it in a gym where we prefer? No, but it's still something that we're doing. We're still going to feel really good about it. Like you said, Christina, you got 15 minutes of walking versus your 6 mile. That's still great. Mindset's a lot better. We got some sunshine, and it sets a better tone for the day too.
I also feel like it allows you not to freeze, because I find that a lot of people freeze because they're like, this isn't going to be perfect. So what do I do? Like, right. I guess I can't do anything then. Like, I guess I can't do anything because I can't do it exactly how it should be done. And like Christina just said, no, like, okay, you can't run, you can walk, like, you got to walk in. How cool is that? Like, instead of freezing yourself or like being kind of, like you said too, Priscilla, suffocated in that moment. Like if it can't be perfect, that doesn't mean that it's wrong. Like
Right.
it's still right. You can still create some pretty awesome magic and progress without perfection even existing.
Right. Yeah.
I love that. There was something else that you guys both said that I was like, yes, and now I can't remember it 100%, and it's going to come to me as soon as we finish the recording.
Like at 2 in the morning.
Oh my God, yes. I literally, as I was about to say it, my daughter FaceTimed me and I was afraid it was going to pop up on the computer. Like, shut up. And then now it's melted my brain. Um, yeah, I think that, we nail this home a lot. And it's, that you have to have some sort of plan when it comes to stuff. It doesn't have to be 100%. We've said this a lot, right? Like, obviously, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to be completely thought out. But I think putting something forward helps give some guidance to the day, right? It helps say, I have agency in this. I'm not letting things just happen to me. Oh, I remember it. Okay. So yes, the spiraling is what I was thinking about, where Danica was saying then they use it as something to do nothing. So I've worked with a number of people who were either students or teachers or even administrators. I had one client who was an administrator at like a university where when the busy seasons would come up with school, she'd be at work, for like 12 to 15-hour days and just stuck in the office and things like that. So it became a lot harder to get activity going. But a lot of times what can also happen for those people is it gets difficult to control the nutrition side as well. And now there's difficult and then there's impossible, right? If you're locked at a conference in a city you don't live in and you're stuck in this room all day and they're catering food in, you don't have control over that. Eat to keep your brain going. We will deal with it. The one day is not going to, even if it's a whole week, it's not going to ruin anything, right? That's a completely different story than like I had a client who got put up for training for like 3 or 4 weeks for school too, in a hotel, going to like these trainings during the day, but she had a fridge in her hotel room and then they were in charge of their breakfast and dinner, but lunch was provided. And so it was like, all right, well, then let's roll with the sandwich tray or like whatever they've been providing you for lunch. But you've got a refrigerator in your room. And that means that we can have things like some fruit, some Greek yogurt, maybe some shakes. We can fill in the gaps. You can shove stuff in your bag for while you're going and sitting in there. Even if it's stuff like the increased hunger of running. That's something that there's a lot of misconceptions where people will be like, I'm going to train for a marathon because I want to lose 10 pounds. And I'm like, whoo-hoo! You're going to gain 15 while you're running it, and then we'll try to lose it. Like, it's like the exact opposite. Because have you seen where they call it like runger? It's for real because as soon as you're done with the activity, if it didn't start during the run, it hits you like a train as soon as you're done, super big. And then for me, it'll usually go away for a while after that, like immediate. But I could easily put away 2,000 to 3,000 calories in that like hour if I'm not paying attention to stuff, especially if I'm just walking around the pantry like as I go. And so having a plan with that and then having a good understanding of what you're diving into. Like a lot of people will say, well, I'm going to go train for these runs. It's going to help me lose weight. But then it's like, I hope you're tracking and you're paying attention to stuff because maybe your hunger does get away from you. Intake accidentally goes up. And then it's like, oh, well, the running is stressing out my body and that's why I'm gaining weight. And it's like, no. Your body is just hungry. It's really hungry.
Yeah, that actually happened to me. That happened to me yesterday with the runger thing that you talked about. So I went running. So my original goal was my husband went to soccer and I was going to go to Crunch down the road and do a run on the treadmill, right? Because it was hot as hell. So then we get to the field and I'm like, you know what? I'll just run around campus. It's on UF's campus, the field that we go to. I'm like, let me just run around campus. I'm right here. Don't have to drive down the street. So knowing that I was going to be a little bit hungry afterwards and I was going to finish up before soccer ended, I told my husband, I'm like, hey, put this in your bag. So I had like some Nerds clusters and I had some like biscotti that I got from Trader Joe's. Real easy carb sources that I can hit afterwards. I was like, put this in your bag. So I finished up with my run earlier than I expected, and I'm sitting there just like watching them play, and then like 20 minutes goes by, I'm like, fuck, I'm hungry. Like, let me go. Thank God I brought these snacks, because that's gonna help me, until we get dinner, and we stayed at soccer a little bit longer. So, your hunger goes up for sure after running. It's crazy.
And even just planning for stuff like that, that's a lot of times where I'll talk to clients and they'll be like, well, then I get super hungry at that point, like, and I'll immediately want to add food, and they'll get nervous about what that's going to do to like the overall balance of their day. And a lot of the times I think if we just purposely add something like carby and then have like a decent mixture of like fats and protein with it to give it some grip, right? Because nobody's like, oh, I'm so full from that bag of Nerds clusters.
Yeah, right.
And
it held me over for like 30 minutes until we got.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so, I mean, I always have like the candy kind of thing, but having something that even provides, maybe like 5 to 10 grams of fat, or like 10 to 20 grams of protein, if we're planning ahead, saying this has to be my bridge, sometimes that 200 to 300 calories can keep you from having an extra like 5 to 6 that you didn't realize you were accidentally nibbling on when we're just rolling with it. And so I was talking to somebody recently who has not tried flexible dieting, and they had a lot of hesitancy with it. And then the way that they looked at it was like, it's too much control, it's too much paying attention, like all of this kind of stuff. And I was like, no, what it really is, if you practice it with an open mind, is like gaining the understanding of your foods and how your body responds to them, and then trying to dial up the positive and dial down the negative, especially if we're not doing it in terms of controlling aesthetics or weight or something like that. And so in a performance opportunity, it is so much fun, I think, to get to play with that. And then also though, like, how did you feel if you had the Nerds clusters before your run? And then when you, like, did you hit the block with anything? What did your heart rate do? Did you get hungry during it? How did this happen? And like following all of that different stuff. Oh, especially if you get into like super long runs, Priscilla, and then in the future we can play with like that. I love it for you so much. Yay. Okay, so let's see. So we talked about time blocking, we talked about planning, we talked about researching things, we talked about mindset. Do you guys have anything else that we should make sure we hit?
That was good.
Yeah, that was
I feel like that was a good overhaul of don't just go with the FAFO mentality.
Right. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's appropriate, but I'd say
sometimes
day-to-day life, probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Like we need
every once in a while, maybe, but for the most part, we want a plan that we can still fall back on. Right. To kind of keep those routines and those foundations.
Right. We need emotional stability around here and to know what's coming.
We can anticipate things a little bit more.
Exactly. Even like this last weekend, we were talking about wanting to rent a boat again before summer was done. And then I was out on my long run and I randomly got service, and I get a notification that it was like, your reminder for your boat rental tomorrow morning. And like on one hand, I was like, oh yay, that's a nice surprise. On the other, I was like, oh, I need like 3 days to emotionally prepare for that. I'm like packing and then taking the kids, and it's an hour drive. And
a little bit of everything.
Like, yeah, that planning aspect is nice. All right, ladies. Well, if you guys have any questions, Priscilla at prophysique.com, always the same first name at prophysique. If you leave any comments on the YouTube, that'll be me in there chatting with you. Let me know if you have any questions, or if you want to get in contact with her, if you guys have any podcast ideas, things like that. We're recording this on Thursday, August 7th. Tomorrow's the last day of the Transformation Challenge, so by the time you hear this, it'll already be over. And we'll be in the process of people submitting their things. So if you hear this, and it is Thursday, August 14th, you have until tomorrow, midnight Eastern, for everyone. There's no exceptions to turn your shit in. So don't forget. Put the 90-day card in your pictures. You got stuff. We do have sales open for the Fall into Fitness Challenge, and I'm really excited about this one because like selfishly for my life, this is the time of year where I feel more ready to get back to stuff, where I'm like, all right, let's dial shit up. It's going to be fall and the temperatures are more comfortable. The kids are back into school. We can kind of get into routine and have that whole back to school kind of vibe. I'm going to go back to the gym. Oh my God. I've had like no reason to drive. My gym is 30 minutes away. So it's like past the kids' school. So it makes sense on school days for me to go there. And I've just been working out at home all summer. Gets the job done, but it's not as good. So I'm very excited to be in a room full of people that I don't want to talk to, but we're all doing the same thing. So that should be fun. So if you guys have any ideas or questions or, hey, I need help with that kind of stuff as we go into it, let me know. And have a good day. I think that's everything.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye.